What's up everybody and welcome to B is for Build. We're back working on the apocalyptic single seater. It's a name. In today's episode, the goal is to get the single seater running and driving. If I'm not doing a burnout right here, then something went severely wrong. If I did do a burnout, pretty cool, future Chris, way to go. All right, I can already tell I've been in the shop too many hours. I'm already talking to my future self. All right, let's get down to work. Stay tuned. So when getting a car running, there's no better place to start than the steering, especially if you don't have any steering whatsoever. So what we had in this car laying down in place is a Volvo S60 electronic power steering rack. What I wanted to do was use an electronic power steering rack just to learn my way through them, and it saves a little bit of money on running hydraulic lines, high pressure hydraulic lines to the power steering pump. So first thing I had to do was mount the hydraulic power steering rack in place. So I cut a tube to length that bolted into the previous mounting location for the Corvette power steering rack. I plasma cut out some 1/4 inch thick plate tabs. Almost broke my wrist drilling holes in these things. Our drill press broke, so I gotta get another one of those. That hurt really bad. I learned from Oscar putting everything in place and getting it all set into place, and then do your tack welds, and then pull the piece out and fully weld out. So I added a bunch of gussets in there for added strength and fully welded the hell out of that thing. It's super beefy. Then we got it test bolted in after a little bit of cleanup work, obviously. Painted it, and then got it test bolted in there. So the rack is in place now. It's not gonna go anywhere from left to right or up or down. Now I gotta get a steering shaft that connects my steering wheel to the rack itself, which is challenging because these are built for vehicles that have, you know, 2 seats. So it's offset usually from the driver. So I'm mocking everything up here with some cross supports, double checking my brake booster, brake pedal, reservoir, all that good stuff. And then looking at cross supports and kind of how I want the steering wheel as far as figuring out like steering wheel height and the angle of approach that I want the steering wheel to be up at and come down. Having the steering wheel at a bit of a downward angle meant a lot more room for my knees and everything, which I really appreciated, but then I had to make sure that the shaft didn't get in the way of the brake booster. You can see I've got these bearings here, the blue and the green. Those are bearings. They're called pillow block bearings or carrier bearings. They do a lot of really good work to help keep that shaft super steady and strong, and it gives you a good feeling of confidence within the vehicle. So I got all that stuff bolted in there, the shafts welded together, and I reused the U-joints off of an S60 steering shaft originally. All right, so never mind the insane camber. I'm gonna dial that out later. But check this out. Turning my steering wheel. Wait a minute. Wait. Oh my God. Turn my steering wheel left. And the car is going to the right. Turn my steering wheel to the right. And the car is going left. Well, that's not good. I literally just figured that out as I was trying to film this for you guys and be like, oh, the tie rods are done and it works. I mean, it works. It's just inverted. I don't think if I, like, say the steering rack is like this, if I flip it upside down like this, that could have been how it was supposed to be in the car. I don't think that changes anything because you're still turning a thing clockwise or counterclockwise to do. My brain's gonna explode. So I found out you actually can flip it upside down and go right to left, left to right. After I got my brain back together, I realized, okay, so I just got this thing. It's essentially just flopped upside down and I need to flop it around. But that meant that my mounting tabs were on the bottom. Now they needed to go somewhere else. So I cleaned up the previous tabs by cutting them off of the car for the Corvette steering rack tabs to make some room. Got a ratchet strap to hold everything in place and got it all centered and dialed in and square. And then I just went ahead and welded my previous tube that was bolted in. I welded it to the frame. One mistake I made here is I just did a full weld out rather than tack welds and finish testing everything. I just fully welded the thing out without actually 100% bolting in the steering shaft because I had to shorten it a little bit. And once I shortened it, I realized it no longer fit because I had changed the height of the steering rack a little bit. Changed it in a good way, but unfortunately it was really bad for the steering shaft. So I realized that frame rail didn't have to be exactly where it was, and I moved it about 1/4 of an inch. So the car's a little bit different, so I decided by 1/4 of an inch. That's just between me and you guys. So now I'm getting the brake booster in there, the brake pedal, brake booster. And now that the steering shaft jogs to the right, it is a little bit of a tighter fit. I had to get creative. I also hated the brake pedal that came with that thing. It was really stupid looking. So I had an old assembly in just basically the scraps in the back. I went ahead and cut off that brake pedal and did a lot of testing and got the brake pedal rebuilt with a new arm. You're seeing here, it's got kind of a U-shaped arm. It's really good and it clears everything nicely. Also got the accelerator pedal in there. That's just a standard GM accelerator pedal that I welded a bracket onto and threw that in there as well. And then now we're getting the reservoir bolted on, and you're gonna see Kyle in the top right of the screen here. He's helping me out with the brakes. He's kind of our brakes guy now. And he's bolting in a brake bias adjustment valve and doing the brake lines. I jumped into this point to weld in some of the supports. So we had more vertical supports coming in and a backing plate for the motor mount. It's kind of a really heavy duty vertical plate that goes into that the motor mount bolts straight through to. And then I needed a battery, obviously, because we're about to start on electrical. So I built a little bit of a battery tray there. And now I'm getting a crossbar going and mocking up the placement for the ECU. I'm moving on to the electrical side of the world. Now that I have steering and I have brakes, electrical and cooling is kind of all that's left. So I've got the Holley Dominator ECU in here. Got the new automatic trans harness, which is very new to us. You can see me looking on the phone trying to figure out which wires do what and what ones need to be wired in where. And you can see me here with pen and paper. And what I'm doing is I'm mapping out the ECU, the inputs, the information that we need to send to the ECU, and working with the race pack and what buttons we want to control different things on the car. I'm just writing them all down, so when I go into wiring, it's a lot more simple. So once I got that sorted, I'm on to working with the race pack. This is a part that's provided by Holley. This is a smart wire race pack with a street wire harness. It's a really good way to, it's called a PDM power distribution module to distribute all the power to your car. It's fast, it's easy. You can see me, I'm just teasing out the wires from the loom, the wires that I want to use right away off the bat. The rest of them, I just bundle up and zip tie them into our vehicle in case we want to grab one later on in development of this car. So I've got all the different wires running to all the different places I need them to go. Now it's just as simple as routing them and connecting them. It's pretty cool. And then you program the PDM to make sure the buttons on the keypad do what you want, and you are done. So I also built a ground distribution block there, which is funny because it's red, so most people would think it's power, but that's ground in BS for Build World. So I got a ground distribution block right there. Just got a steady ground going straight to the battery, and then all the different little individual things that need to be grounded, a lot of them run there, or the bigger ones might run to the chassis close by where they're at. Later on, I also build one of these things for the power distribution that's black. So it's really just to fool the criminals. If they try and hotwire my car, they'll be very confused. Up until this point, the seat had not been bolted down, but I really wanted to put it on seat rails, so that's what we're doing. I just wanted to have it adjustable so people could make sure they get their head in the right spot. There's virtually unlimited legroom in this car, so it's really all just about head placement, so it's safe and under that rear main hoop. Jumping into the shifter, this is a B&M automatic transmission shifter. It's really amazing billet piece. I love it. It's got a 3-speed gate in there. I put a 4-speed gate in there to match up with our trans. And the shifting cable is really similar to like what you'd see on like a 10-speed bike to hit the brakes or shift the gears. We got that done, and then I'm welding some studs into the seat rails so we can have the seat kind of slide in on studs and then go. And I'm figuring out the position that I want for the shifter now that we know where the seat is. So I'm fully welding out the shifter bracket, and it just bolts right onto that bracket. And then I decided to fully weld out the rest of the additions for the crossbar that we had made in here. And don't worry, a floor pan is definitely coming. So now that the bracket's welded in, I'm installing this beautiful B&M shifter, and this is, again, another part that's provided by Holley, and the link will be in the description. Everything that we're using here is sponsored by Holley. The links will be in the description for the race pack, the Holley Dominator EFI, and that. And we're moving on to our radiator. So this is a radiator that's provided by Alloyworks. They wanted us to test it out. And what I'm trying to do here is weld on some tabs. It's an aluminum TIG welding experience. I TIG weld aluminum like once every year on average, so a bit of a learning curve. It got really hot for a while, but I did finally get it dialed in with a little bit of tips from Oscar. Got it dialed in, and we're starting to look at our radiator placement and building some stainless steel radiator tubing here. You got to use stainless steel or else the steel would rust on you. So I TIG welded that joint together too. I had to make a 45. I did like a single pie cut and just TIG welded that joint shut. The radiator placement is not ideal, being above the exhaust, but it's not actually that bad. And the reason it's there, honestly, is because there was no place to put it anywhere else. I had a design for it to be in one of the wings of the car, but it just doesn't fit. So that's where it goes, and it does work, so it's fine. Put in another Alloyworks piece, being the radiator reservoir up top high, so we get those air bubbles out. And then I'm on to the last piece of electrical, which is getting my alternator wired in. You need an inline resistor on this type of alternator that drops down from 12 volts to 5 volts. So I got that in there and then wired the hardcore wire that goes straight to the battery to charge the battery as it's working. And it's about time to fill up this new cooling system.
All right, first test since the rewire. This is always a little nerve-wracking. Well, not nerve-wracking, just exciting. So, we've got power on. Let's go ahead and test ignition first. Ignition on is going to turn on the ECU, turns on things like the screen, the power steering, a bunch of other stuff. New ECU found. Do you want to load the factory defaults for the ECU? How about we do that real quick? And we're reading good voltage, and this is something we're going to check once we fire up, is that our voltage goes over we're about 12.5 volts right now. And the screen is reading from the ECU, which is great. First time that we've done that. I'm going to test the fuel pump. Good. Radiator fans, that's new. There's definitely something in one. I might just have to self-clearance. I don't think I pushed anything around, but it's making some... Plastic fan blades. Might need a little self-clearancing. Line lock again? Okay. I think everything's working. Time to fire it up. Well, test number one was a bit of a failure. The idle was too high. Air fuel ratios were off. It was reading lean, which I really don't like. The coolant temps came up, and I could see when the thermostat opened and it tried to cool itself back down, and it went down a few degrees, and then it just overheated the rest of the way, which means that there's normally a giant air bubble somewhere in the system that's blocking the circulation. Right now, the number one thing I want to figure out is the idling too high, and which I think is caused by a vacuum leak, which is also making the air fuel ratios read lean. I think we got a vacuum leak. We got to figure it out. All right, it's about an hour later, and I'm hoping I figured out the high idle issue. I definitely found an issue. First thing I checked was vacuum lines everywhere. Luckily, this engine does not have that many. There's really just one spot on the back there. No issues with vacuum lines. Next, somehow I realized that there was an issue going on with the throttle body, and I started testing wires for continuity from the back of the pin or the plug that goes to the ECU, just testing each wire for continuity. And the wire that goes to the throttle body driver, when I got inside here, I found out that it did not have continuity. And hang on. And once I got inside the sheathing, I could see that it was disconnected. So we're gonna go ahead and upgrade these connectors, something that has a crimp and a heat shrink on it, and reconnect that all up. And then we'll fire it up. And this isn't gonna fix the cooling issue, but at least hopefully this will fix our AFR and high idle issue. Alright, that is a lot better. So we're idling right at target here, and you can see our AFR for idle at 14, that's solid. Everything's looking good. Now we just got to fix this cooling issue. Okay, we've been running for a while. It looks like we got our coolant situation figured out. It's pretty dialed right there at 200. Seems to be where it's set. I've been running it for about 10 minutes like this, and it's feeling good. Lines are pretty stable throughout, and the fans are really doing their job, so that's good. That fan's noisy as hell. Might have to replace that guy. That's unfortunate. So I'm just gonna sit here and let it do its thing for like 20-30 minutes so I can feel really confident the system is working all right. And then it's time to drive it. Okay guys, we're outside for the first time. This will be street legal as a kit car, but it's not registered yet, so I'm limited to my parking lot. I wish I could take you guys along with on our journey of this shakedown drive, but anytime we film our parking lot, we get a bunch of weirdos coming by, so I'm gonna have to do this in private. But I'm extremely excited, to say the least. I'm gonna jump in and take it for its first spin. Car works. I'll tell you about it in a second, but before I go inside, let's see if we can get a burnout out of it. All right, guys, well, the test drive did not go perfectly. The trans did not have enough fluid in it, so we topped up the trans fluid, and then it actually went pretty perfectly. I drove it around quite a bit. I didn't bottom out anywhere, which I was really surprised by. And I mean, the brakes are snappy. The steering is fantastic. It's like really responsive. The throttle's there. Guys, it works. It works. I'm super, super excited on this. So the burnout, the line lock did its job, and it let loose the back wheels, and it held the fronts. But the problem is this is on snow tires for some reason, because we stole these tires off the GTR. Won't be on snow tires for a long time. Snow tires are extremely grippy, and there's a lot of weight in the back, not a ton of weight in the front. That's by design. And what it did was it kind of just shoveled my front away. It pushed through it. But we can fix that. And also, if you're in a bigger area and you just turn the wheel a little bit, you'll start doing donuts, and it's a lot easier, and the tires lose as much friction. But they were very frictiony, and it pushed me forward, and I did not get as manly of a burnout as I wanted. But this is BS for Build, and as you should know, we never ever get great burnouts. Not yet. This will be the one, though. I have a good feeling about this. Anyways, guys, we got a running and driving single-seater. In the next episode, we're gonna start getting the body on it. Make sure you tune in then. Please subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Follow us, B is for Build on Instagram, and we'll see you soon. Peace!